All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Glad to see so many of you online with us without a text message even going out. We realized just a couple minutes ago that a text did not go out, so wasn't quite sure if we were going to have anybody even be on. So thank you for jumping on and spending a few minutes with us. I'm just trying to finish get everything set up here that I wanted to go over with you. So any questions before? Oh, there's the text right now. It just went out. So, any questions on anything before I jump into what I was going to talk about? All right, I'll take that as a no. So, first thing that I'm going to share with you guys, and you may or may not be aware of this. And so, before I share my screen, let me preface what I'm about to talk about with the fact that I am not an attorney. I am not a CPA. You should not rely on anything that I tell you about what I'm going to say next. Okay, maybe not that bad, but just know that I'm not going to probably have all the answers on this, but I wanted to make sure that you guys are all aware of this. So there was some information that came out, and apparently this first happened the end of last year, I believe it was. And that is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network is they've gotten this new law passed where basically what they are doing is it's a way to try to help them to figure out people who are laundering money. And so as a result of that, effective January 1st of this year, everybody that has a corporation. So if you've got an LLC or any type of a business that you have set up, you have to actually go through and fill out this. Hopefully, you're seeing my screen here, the beneficial ownership information report. So let me just explain a little bit about that, what you have to do, and what that looks like. But many of you should have, if you don't, really, I probably should say all of you pretty much probably should have. Now, again, I'm not a CPA, so there may be exceptions to this, but for the most part, everybody should have set up some type of a corporation because the way that you are paid as an agent on a 1099 allows you to write off a lot of things. And so you want to make sure that if you have not set up a corporation or a business that you talk to a CPA or an attorney to figure that out. But if you do have one set up, then what they required is any business that was set up prior to 2024 is required to come in here and fill out this beneficial ownership information. So you would just come to, and the website address is this up here. I don't know how well you can see it, but FinCen, FINCEN.gov/BOI. So I'll copy that and throw it into the chat box here so that you can have that in the chat box, the link. But that's the link to this website that I'm on. And then what you would do, and it's pretty simple. Jason and I have both gone through and done it. Is you go through and click on this to file a report using the BOI e-filing system. So you're just going to go through and answer the questions. You're going to put in the tax ID and all the information about your business. You're going to put in who the owners of the business are. So that is required for every business. Now, again, if your business was set up prior to January 1st, 2024, you have the whole year to get that taken care of. If you have set up a business since January 1st of this year, you have to go in and fill this report out within 90 days. So if you did it in January, you're already too late. You're already past your time frame. But you need to go in and fill that out. After this year, what's going to happen is you have 30 days to go in and put this beneficial ownership information anytime. So just keep that in mind. If you are starting any businesses, if you're a newer agent, going to go get one set up. And hopefully if you talk to a CPA to get that set up or an attorney, then will know and get this registered for you. But if not, just know if you have a business, you need to go through and get that done so you don't get fined by not doing it by the end of this year. So anyway, as I said before, that I'm not a CPA, I am not an attorney, so don't fully rely on everything that I just told you on all of that. You will want to talk to a CPA or an attorney if you have additional questions beyond that. There are some great things on the website that will help you understand a little bit more, and it walks you through. Like I said, it's not too difficult. The one piece of advice that I will give you, though, the one thing I will tell you that you should do if you have more than one business, then you want to go to that FinCEN website and first get a FinCEN ID. That way you don't have to retype the information twice. So I have two different businesses, and I didn't do that. And so when I went through and I had to retype the information multiple times. So if you get that FinCEN ID first, then you can plug that in rather than having to go through and retype all that information. So anyway, just wanted to make sure. I will keep talking about that. I'll talk about it again in Summit in August, just to remind people that they need to do that. So anyway, all right, next. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is we've been seeing some listings coming in where what people are doing is they are putting the effective date to, well, it doesn't matter too much what you're putting effective date, whether it's today or in a week from now. But anytime somebody is doing the MLS exclusion, that what they are doing is that agents are putting in whatever the effective date is. They're using the listing exclusion form. And then when they actually go to put it on the MLS, they're putting the date, the effective date of the list date, as the date that they're inputting it into the MLS. And it needs to be the date that the effective date of your listing agreement is. So let me get my screen shared here, and we'll kind of just walk through it real quick here. Okay, so this is our exclusive right to sell listing agreement. And whatever date you put up here as the effective date is when the listing will become effective. So if you, and again, to some extent, I'll talk more about this, but to some extent, I almost feel like with these changes on the listing exclusion, that it almost doesn't matter what date you put in here, meaning it used to be that what we would do is, and why we had this different effective date is somebody would be going out to get a listing, but you were like, okay, I need to get the photographer out there. I got to get all my marketing ready to go. So let's put the effective date to be some point, a week from now, so that I can get everything done, and then I'll have it hit the MLS at that same time. Well, since then, the MLS then came out with that listing exclusion form, which if you go to search on the MLS for that, you will notice it is now gone from the MLS. And the reason is because what the MLS wants us to do now is you're going to input that on the MLS. And it looks like I thought I had one open. Let me open up the MLS here. So from here, when you're going to do the exclusion, you're going to come up here to Forms, MLS Forms, and then it's this MLS listing exclusion. So when you click on that, you're just going to fill all of this information out online now. So you're not using the actual form for the MLS, you're just inputting it in here. I'm going to go back over to Dotloop, though, because we still have to have something saying that the property is not going to be on the MLS until it is publicly marketed. And so the way that you want to do that now is through an addendum to the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. And so I've just put one together here to just show what you could put as the language. So what I've got typed in there, and hopefully you can see it okay, but I'll read it just in case, is it says, seller instructs the listing broker and listing agent not to submit the property to the MLS until the listing is publicly marketed. So you could do some other variations of that, but the idea is we want the seller telling us not to put the property on the MLS until it is publicly marketed, or you could put until and put a specific date in if you want to have that specified date of this is when it's going to go on. But as a general rule, I think you're probably best to just put it as the way I've got it worded here is the seller instructs the listing broker and listing agent not to submit the property to the MLS until the listing is publicly marketed. That way, we have as much time really as we want. Now, usually the question that people have on this is going to be, yeah, but I don't want my days on market to be showing, whatever. And so what agents are doing is then when they go and actually put it on the MLS, they're putting the days on market, or excuse me, the effective date for the MLS, they're putting that as the day that they're putting it on the MLS. Well, as long as you have gone on the MLS and done this online MLS exclusion notice, then you're going to be just fine, and it's not going to count your days on market. So you'll still be able to put what the effective date of the listing was, which again was the date we put up here on the listing agreement, and you're still going to be okay with it not showing, hey, it's been 2 weeks or whatever, that the property's already been on the market. So, questions? This is when somebody comes on and says, hey, you've been muted the whole time.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
So, a little confusing because I thought in the past it was the time that they signed it was, I can't remember how we were instructed to do this. So on the effective date, so I'm going on a listing appointment today. They don't want to put it on for 2 weeks. What date do I put at the top of that form? That's an easier way.
Yep, perfect. Great question. So what I would say is, based on the fact, if you're going to use the addendum like we talked about down here, then you could put today's date as the effective date of the listing. See, in the past, before we had that, is where we would have said, okay, you're going to wait a couple weeks, just put 2 weeks from today as the date up here, and then have them sign it, and then that's when it would become effective. And now the caveat to that, which is probably what you're thinking, is if you use the MLS's listing agreement, then it becomes effective once everyone has signed that agreement. So ours is different than the MLS in that way, as we have an actual effective date. But like I said, I think really, as long as you use this addendum and say, hey, it's the property's not going to go on the MLS until it's publicly marketed, you would be fine to put today's date as the effective date, have everybody sign it. That way it's in effect, it's ready to go, everything's there, and you can do whatever you need to, and then you don't have to put it on the MLS until you're ready to publicly market it.
But we also need to do that form that's on the MLS now.
Oh, yes, correct. Yep. You also have to then jump onto I realized I'm not sharing my screen anymore. I thought I still was. Yeah, you would still have to, once you get the listing signed, you would come on to the MLS, go up there to the forms, MLS forms, and you're going to put in the address, the effective date of the listing agreement, the expiration date, and then what the seller's instructions were. And so till the submission date below, or until the MLS, until it's publicly marketed, or just don't submit it at all ever to there. So typically you're going to select that middle one and then submit.
So go back up a little bit on this form. Okay. And so the effective date would be the date on the exclusive right to sell date. Is that correct?
Correct. It's going to be the same. It should be the same date as what you put in right here.
So those dates don't matter. It's the way you mark the seller's instructions, do not submit the property until the listing is publicly marketed. You don't have to put a date in there. Is that what I'm understanding now?
When you say in there, meaning on this or on this? On the addendum?
Either one, because we're not using, if we use that addendum, seller instructions, we're not putting a specific date. Before we had to have a date. Okay.
Correct. Now, if you did select this, though, the do not submit the property until the submission date below, you'll notice it pops up. Oh, I just lost my page there. You'll notice when I do that. So if you were going to do it to it, I don't know why it won't. stay on there. If you are going to do it a specific date, then you would on here select this top, do not submit until the submission date below. And it's not working. So apparently don't do that. But that's how you would do it is once I selected this top one, I would then put the date that it's going to go on. But then you have to keep track and make sure you remember to actually put it on that date. And if for some reason you weren't going to put it on by that date, you'd then have to do another addendum. So that's why for me, I just feel like you're better off to just saying, don't submit the property to the MLS until the listing is publicly marketed. And then that way you're good.
You
and
can
as
do
long as
any
you don't,
date you want. You can do any
correct,
date
you
you
just,
want.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
I like that.
As soon as you're ready to publicly market it, you're good to go.
Russ, can I add a clarification to see if I'm understanding? But we
Sure.
can, on the exclusive right to sell, if we know that we're going to market, say, a week from today, next Thursday, we can put that as the effective date, sign it today because it's still, they're still under, they've still signed it, but we're not going to put it on the MLS. And we don't have to really even do this other sheet because we're not really even going
Correct.
to put it on the MLS until that time, correct?
Yes. Yeah. If you were to just back on the on our exclusive right to sell, if you just knew, hey, we don't want it to go on and we are prepared and we're going to be ready next Thursday, you could just put next Thursday as the effective date up here, and then you're good to go. Just don't do any public marketing of the property. The biggest thing is if you start to do any public marketing of the property, it has to be on the MLS within 1 day of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
So that
Yep.
would include no sign or anything, which
Correct.
I think is a little tricky. But what you're saying is if you do it all this way, the only date that will show the date that goes on the MLS is the MLS form, right?
Correct. No. Sorry. There won't be a date that on the MLS form. You're going to put the same date as you had up here as the effective date. But
And
because
you
you've done
can't put anything else in the MLS until those dates match too. You can't go in and have a date like today and start trying to put everything in the MLS. until
Right,
those dates match.
but there, initially, when you introduced this, there was some place where you put that date. And I guess it's only on that one form that you were having problems with it going up. Is that correct? So your advice is not to put the date, just put it on the MLS, and there really isn't a date until that appears, as long as the effective date and all that matches up with your listing agreement.
Yep. Yeah. And as long as you filled out that MLS listing exclusion form, then it's not going to hurt you on your days on market, and you're able to put it on. You put in that effective date. And again, the key thing on this is if you're going to do this, you can't do any marketing. You want to make sure that your seller understands. In fact, I'll just pull that up while I've got it here. We have in our MLS agreement, it says the seller agrees. Oh, it's not highlighting. The seller agrees that any advertising the seller intends to conduct, including print and or electronic media, shall first be approved in writing by the seller's agent. The seller further agrees that the seller, agent, and the company at their discretion are authorized to do blah, blah, blah. But so part of it is just making sure that the seller even knows they can't, if the seller goes and starts marketing the property, we would then need to have to put it on the MLS within that 1 day as well.
So even though you're waiting, say a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, I mean, obviously everyone signed everything. No one can take your listing away, right? Like, even though
Right.
it's not publicly marketed, just the fact they've signed all these forms
Correct.
keeps that to you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's the whole point of
But
it
if
is
the-
that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. But if the ERA or the ERS is dated 2 weeks out, they could sell it on their own, or somebody else could come in and take the listing, right?
So you do run that little bit of a risk. I thought, and I was
No,
trying to look.
Russ,
that's gonna.
it's in our exclusive right. If you scroll down just a little bit,
I couldn't find it. I was just going to ask
It's
you because I
right,
couldn't find it.
in the seller warranties and disclosure. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, right at the very start, seller acknowledges they've entered into exclusive right to sell agreement. So read that.
Okay, yeah. So the seller acknowledges they have entered into this exclusive right to sell listing agreement with Century 21 Everest, and this agreement may have an effective date later than the date the seller or sellers sign the agreement. Sign the agreement. In the event the effective date of this ERS is later than the date this ERS is signed, the seller agrees they will not enter into another ERS agreement with any other brokerage. If the sellers do enter into another agreement, this ERS shall govern. So yeah, so we are. Thanks, Jason. I was trying to find that earlier, and I could not find it. So yes, we're still covered, even if you didn't, if you put it 2 weeks out, as long as they signed it.
So it seems like the only thing we have to do is make sure that it's 0 days on the market when it goes on. And that the effective date on this and the other forms all match up. Right?
Yep. You just want to make sure that whatever you put in on your ERS as the effective date is where that should be the effective date everywhere. And if you have done the addendum, just saying, hey, don't put it on the MLS until it's publicly marketed, and you've gone to the MLS and filled out this form, then you're good. Any other questions? All right. Well, hey, thank you all for jumping on and being with us, especially with the text going out so late. Let me see. Marissa has a note in here. When you go, so Marissa put in here, maybe you guys already saw it, but when you go in the MLS to create the listing, the effective date, and then all in caps, has to match the effective date on your ERS, regardless of the day you go live. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So, which is what kind of we had just said. She probably typed the note right before I said it, but just all those dates need to match. So, okay. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for being here. Have an awesome rest of your week and weekend.
Thanks,
and we will
Russ.
talk
Thanks,
to you later.
Jason.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.